So I think I finally know what I want to do with this garbage picked fish tank. And it doesn't particularly have to do with fish or any aquatic creatures, so to speak. I want to try and build a self-sustaining tank. Now, hear me out on this one. It's going to require a lot of time and effort. So, basically, you've got your nitrogen cycle, ammonia converts to nitrite, nitrite converts to nitrate, and then most people leave it at that, and they do water changes to remove the nitrate. But it's called the nitrogen cycle because the last step is using anaerobic bacteria to create or to eat the nitrate and turn it into nitrogen. And that creates a full cycle. Now, the key to this is that last step, the anaerobic bacteria can technically make one of about 3 different types of byproduct. If you got nitrogen as the byproduct, that's good. But the other 2 could be lethal gas. So it's really a matter of trying to get the right amount of everything. And part of this requires a very deep sand bed. So what we have is some lava stone. This is very porous material. It's actually quite similar to Seachem Matrix in many respects. Now this is going to make up the first layer of the bed on the fish tank. After that, we'll go with something more fine like some gravel, and then on top of that we'll go with sand. Washing out the rock as much as possible, it just never seems to be enough. Tank's all cloudy. Now obviously this will settle down in about half an hour, and I could just siphon it out that way, but the addition of these rocks has caused a little bit more displacement of the water, so we're going to have to remove some of this water anyway. Okay, so here's the plan thus far. We've got the lava rock as our very bottom base of our substrate. Now that's a very large, coarse material. We're going to top that off with some gravel. Now this is just general purpose gravel. Normally, as long as you don't get stuff that's treated with any chemicals, you can go to Home Depot, and as long as you thoroughly wash it out, technically it should be fine. We're going to find out. But the idea is we're going to go from coarse to fine to finer. So we're going to spread this gravel all across the top, and then we're going to top it all off with some pool filter sand for the very finest layer. And now that we got the gravel in, you can see on the glass some of the lava rock underneath. But from the top, you can't really see anything. It's nice and flat, which is good because there is one more layer that we are going to add, and that is sand. Now we're going to be using pool filter sand because, like everything else here, it comes from hardware stores and it's very cheap. You just have to wash all this stuff very carefully before you put it in. Now pool filter sand is different than regular play sand that you can get because it's not going to compact, and it's going to be heavy enough that it goes back down to the bottom quickly. And that'll provide a nice smooth surface for our creatures to walk on, or if it's a crab, or swim around, if it's got bristles on its nose so it doesn't hurt itself. And let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so at this point we have the gravel over the lava rock, and the water was nice and clean, so we're going to drain that out, and we're going to put in some sand. And now we've got the pool filter sand on top of everything. It's a nice, smooth, soft sand. And we got our triple layer cake of substrate. That substrate is thick. That's kind of what we're going for. Really fine on top, then coarse, then really coarse on the bottom. Looks pretty good, so we're going to go ahead and fill this tank up. So now, as you can see, we've got basically the finished product for the most part. Water all filled up, any cloudiness has settled away, as water that's cloudy does. And we got our trusty hang-on back filter running, which you can see the deposits from hard water built up on this. You can scrape it off and then siphon it out, but hard water is hard water. Which is also why you'll notice the sand is slightly discolored. That's deposits because there's not really a filter between the well pump and the water source here in the fish room. For more sensitive stuff, I obviously have the reverse osmosis filter. So many tubes. The internet, it's a series of tubes. Anywho, so the idea here is once again building bacteria as best we can. So obviously, you could achieve this same effect that we're going for with just a really thick sand bed, but you would need creatures to constantly stir that stuff up because the pockets of gas are going to get trapped, and then if you stir around and release it all at once, it could be fatal. We're trying some interesting things. So, once again, the lava rock we're hoping acts like Seachem Matrix, and being underneath the gravel and sand, there's low flow of water and less oxygen. Oxygen tends to reside higher up in the tank versus lower down. And the lower oxygen we're hoping will build the anaerobic bacteria to convert nitrates into nitrogen. And I've particularly chosen lava rock because of its properties to house anaerobic bacteria, hopefully better than just sand. Now the gravel layer here is there to help plants latch onto it and grow root systems more easily throughout, because sometimes plants have a problem with sand, whereas they don't latch down really well unless it's like a very, very thick sand bed. And then you get problems if it's not thick enough of the plants being uprooted way too easily. I just didn't want to deal with that. And the top layer right here is really a comfort layer for whatever creatures I put in here. Because if I put a fish with bristles, like a pleco, you don't want to irritate the bristles. You know, they can be kind of sensitive. So this sand is super duper soft. And yeah, sand will probably make its way through the gravel, as you see here. That's not really a big problem, because like I said, we're trying to create an area where there's low water flow, low oxygen. Now, you might be thinking, well, how are you going to turn the sand, transfer of nutrients and all that? I'm thinking that I want to put a bunch of rabbit snails in here, because rabbit snails love to dig trenches in sand. And they also release pockets of gas, much like Malaysian trumpet snails. But unlike Malaysian trumpet snails, they don't breed like freaking crazy. And I actually really like rabbit snails. They're so goofy and fun to watch. They're pretty fun overall. There's like a giant Malaysian trumpet snail doing things. And actually, from what I understand, snail poop actually introduces another form of microorganism that's beneficial to a tank. And we're also going to be putting a bunch of plants in here, and I actually want your guys' opinions. What kind of basic freshwater plants, because we're not going to do anything, super stellar in terms of cost with this tank. This whole substrate was less than $20. I'm thinking, I am going to put low-cost plants in here, and I want to know what you guys want to see in here. It's got to be low-tech, because I'm not really going to invest a whole ton of money in a garbage-picked fish tank. Doesn't mean it can't be pretty, but, there is a budget in mind with this setup. Now, setups like this aren't meant to be disturbed. They're not meant to be stirred up and cleaned with a gravel vacuum. Setups like this are meant to be somewhat self-sustaining, because we're aiming for a full nitrogen cycle, meaning ammonia to nitrite to nitrate to nitrogen. If that is successful, there won't be any nitrate in here, or at least very little. Whatever's left up or left from the conversion process with bacteria, hopefully will be eaten by plants. And I'm hoping for a system that mainly just needs fill-ups. Obviously, there's maintenance refills here and there. No tank is 100% self-sustaining, obviously. But you can get kind of close. Some people even rely on substrates like this to do their filtration for them without a filter like you see on fish tanks in general. No canister filter, no hang-on back, just substrate like you would have in the wild. That is something that isn't really done by many aquarists, but it is something that is done, and we're kind of going for a hybrid setup like that. So, you know, we'll have some big snails to turn the sand, we'll have some basic plants, I'll eventually get a lid as well as some lights for the tank, after everything is cycled, of course, because we are going to do an artificial cycle, just using some, you know, janitorial strength ammonia. This stuff, you know, as long as it's just ammonia and not like scented stuff, is a great way to artificially cycle a tank, which means we'll get the bacterial colonies growing super strong without subjecting any aquatic creature to experimentation that might cause them to be stressed out or die. You know, really, this tank is much more about building bacteria than it is about anything else. This is my experimental tank, because I honestly don't know how this setup's gonna work. I've never used these materials before. I've never tried this concept before. I know the basics on how everything's formed, but it takes a long time. You know, when they talk about aging the water, they're really talking about letting certain microorganisms, bacterias, etc. develop that are beneficial to the tank, you know, help keep it more sustained. There's technically more to a cycled tank than just the nitrogen cycle. There's other conversions that can be done if you do it right and wait long enough. But I digress. This is the tank. This is going so far according to plan. It took a ton of washing of the materials, but you can get everything you see here from either Home Depot or Menards for less than 20 bucks. And I've got plenty of leftover stuff too. This substrate's like 3 or 4 inches thick. You know, we've also displaced a lot of water, by the way. So whatever the maximum capacity of this tank is, it's definitely not holding that much in water. We've taken a good third of its capability of holding water and replaced it with other stuff. So, yeah, not entirely sure what's going to go in here, but I have ideas, I have plans. It's going to take a long time, but I'll have to rely on some tests and measuring over the course of the next few months to see exactly where all this goes. Until then, I will update as things happen. But that's pretty much it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay fishy.